Hi everybody, welcome to 30-minute pull request. My name is Jacob Tomlinson and I'm going to try and raise a pull request on GitHub in 30 minutes. I'm going to do something slightly different today. Rather than picking up an issue to work through, I want to kind of more broadly have a look at mocking out external APIs in Python. There's a bunch of different ways of doing this, but I've been thinking a lot recently about other ways that we can handle doing this. So I'm going to look at Obstroid, which is like a chatbot side project of mine. I'm just going to play around for 30 minutes looking at how we can mock out APIs. So I'm going to probably just jump straight in. I don't have an open issue. We're going to head straight into some code and have a look at kind of how we're doing things now and how we can look at doing things in the future. So let's head right over into code and we'll start the timer. Now this is just the Obstroid master branch at the moment. If I head down into tests, so one of the things we're doing, if you watch one of my previous streams, is migrating from old unit test style tests to new PyTest style tests, and also moving things. Currently we have a top level tests folder, where we're looking at moving things to kind of integrated inside Obstroid to make importing easier and PyTest stuff work in a more normal way. So if you have a look in Obstroid connector, the first one we moved is the Facebook connector. So the Facebook connector has a test folder now with this test connector Facebook. What I'm going to look at today is the GitHub connector, which I did actually recently start like a full rewrite of the GitHub connector to improve it. But sadly, the SSD in the machine I was using to do the rewrite died. So I lost the branch I was working on, and annoyingly, I hadn't pushed it anywhere. So this is kind of drawing on some of the work that I was doing there. In that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new folder in the GitHub connector called tests, and I'm going to move the test connector GitHub test file into the right place. Pop that in there. Yep, want to move that. Now I assume there's going to be some things that are broken in here because I've just moved that. There's probably some relative imports or some relative file loading. But first I'm just going to refresh my little test plugin in VS Code and just run these tests and see what we get. So we've got the GitHub connector here. I'm just going to run that test suite on its own. Let's have a look at what tests we have. A couple of different classes. Okay, a few things have failed. And I think this is because, yeah, these are reading in some like mocked out responses. Now let's have a look at what that folder is. So in the tests directory, we have responses. And look, there's a bunch of GitHub kind of and responses that we're expecting, that we're mocking out in the API. So I didn't mean to close all of that. I don't think the gist one is being used in here. That's for something else. What I need to do in tests, I'm going to make a new folder called responses, and I'm just going to move those GitHub ones across. So all those ones starting underscore GitHub. I'm just going to move those into here. Now let's run those tests again and see if that fixes things. Good. Okay. So all of our existing tests pass. I've like restructured the location of them, which I wanted to do anyway. Now, what I should do is just refactor this into PyTest style tests before we actually have a look at changing things. So yeah, I'm just going to have a quick. I'm going to try to do this as fast as I can because this isn't really the point of looking at this. Let's just have a look at the Facebook connector tests and see how I've changed things. So yeah, let's keep that open. GitHub tests, test connector GitHub, let's keep that open as well. I'm going to keep the mocks. I'm just going to get rid of that. Import PyTest. Actually, I'm going to import PyTest at the top. I'm going to move the mock import here as well. I will get rid of these mocks, I think, at some point. I'm going to move that up here. What's wrong with that? Oh yeah, PyTest is imported but unused. Now, these are regular tests. So I'm just going to drop the indentation there. Get rid of that setup. I don't think we actually need that. These aren't going to take self anymore. We need to assert that is none. Assert that is none. And I'm going to assert. Let's change the order of this. I'm going to assert that is equal to GitHub. And again, we're going to do assert logs. Oh, I need caplog. Caplog. And I was having a test, I can just copy and paste things from. Where are we using caplog in here? Let's see. There. We're going to assert, I think that's what I assert error in assert error might need to be a capital error in caplog.txt. Right, let's run those two tests and see how we do. Everybody's a little slow, which is a shame, but let's do that. This is just like, these are some initial ones. I think these tests are going to be reasonably quick to swap over. But I'm going to kind of do this migration. I'm not super worried about that because that's not the point. Why is my test discovery failed? What have I done wrong? Async test is not defined. Yeah, that's fine. Let's just put that back in. Okay, Obstroid connector, GitHub tests. Yeah, so we've got our two tests that I've just moved up here. That failed. Why did that fail? I might change this actually so it says missing auth token. Okay, so that's better. So I think I'm not necessarily gonna move all of these tests. I'm just gonna move the first ones out. But what I want to look at is this test here. I might actually need to just make a fixture as well. In the Facebook connector, we have an Obstroid fixture that we're already taking in. We're using all of these, so we should be able to just use that. I'm going to make a new, am I going to make a new fixture? No, I'm not for now. I'm just going to take, am I calling configure lang? Yeah, we need to call configure lang up at the top here as well. Like that. Don't know if I actually need to run here anymore. Anyway, I'm gonna move these things around. So this setup is going to basically be converted into fixtures, but we're going to run these kind of as we use them. So let's copy this. Let's cut this test out, and we'll put it in here. Just fix the indentation, and then get rid of the references to stuff. So I'm gonna say connector equals, and it's this connector that I'm generating here. Connector equals that, and that's going to take Obstroid instead, and that's going to be set like that. And then we can get rid of, so that's just going to be connector. Then we want assert equals, so we want to assert that is equal to Obstroid, and we want to just assert that. Okay, let's just run this in PyTest style just to make sure it works. And then we can kind of actually talk through what it's doing. Let's connect. Git async plugin was not installed. Yep, that's probably reasonable. pytest.mark.async.io. That's what I need. Let's run it again. Good. Oh, no, still not happy. Async def function, no async plugin installed. See warnings. Have I done this wrong here? Just recheck. I just go re. Let's connect. I don't know why it keeps skipping this. I just not got the plugin installed or something silly. Requirements test. I test async IO. Let's just make sure I've got that installed in my environment. Definitely got the right environment. Activated. Let's go pip install -r requirements test. No, didn't have that installed. That would be why. No, I'm not using pipenv. I'm using Conda. Also, hi. Ooh, that's unpleasant. I might just manually install this for now. Oh, that's very strange. I'm just going to try saying pip install that. Fine. Let's try this again. Just play this. Okay, that failed, which is better than skipping. Why has this failed? Assert none has no attribute. Very bad. Yeah, that's probably fair. This is because we changed our Opstroid around. I'm taking in an actual Opstroid instance here. How am I doing this over here? I'm having to mock all of that out. Maybe I need to do the same here. Definitely move that to a fixture if I'm having to do that. Let's just try again. Fair enough. I don't actually use pipenv myself, and I haven't done. So, oh yeah, that needs to get rid of those cells. I tend to use Conda just because that's what I use. I like most of the scientific Python stuff that I do. So, there are some packages you have to install with Conda. Good. Okay, you passed. So it's I tend to just use the like environment management in Conda as well. Right. That's a shame. I should definitely fit a fixture for that. I might even just do that quickly. PyTest. Is it PyTest.fixture? I never remember. Yes. And I'm going to async def because I like async fixtures. And call it connector. It's going to take Opstroid and it's just going to give me this thing back. Return connector. I'm just going to change this to connector and we'll take Opstroid as well. I don't know if I don't actually need it. No, I'm not going to do that. Right. I wasted nearly half of my 30 minutes just kind of getting myself set up. But in my test, I've got my connector, I've got Opstroid, we're kind of all set up. Now, the thing I wanted to look at here is we're mocking out Opstroid's internal web server, which is fine because the GitHub connector is going to add routes. So this is GitHub. Sorry, that was annoying me before. We probably don't want to do that. We probably do actually want to start this web server with these routes on at some point. But for now, I'll leave that. What I want to do is in this test connect, we're mocking out AO HTTP client session get. We're creating our own response ourselves, creating an object that kind of looks like an HTTP client response object. We're giving it back some data. We're kind of creating futures so that it's all async. We're setting results. We call connect, and then we're asserting that we called this mock. Now, this is quite like a full-on mock. We're doing this every time. And so instead of actually calling the GitHub API, because we don't want to do that as part of CI or whatever, because it will just be messy. If GitHub goes down, our CI will fail. If we make, we might get rate limited. We might end up making calls that won't give us back a consistent answer every time. So we definitely want to be doing something. But what I think we should do is have a web server running. So instead of mocking out our HTTP, we actually just change the base URL that is being called and then point it to our own server. And so I'm going to quickly look up the documentation for AIO HTTP server because I want to make like a little mock class. So I want some copy paste code. I want like the class version of this basically. I think, is that what we want? Something like that, class-based views. I can't remember the quickest way that I did this now. Run a simple web server. Maybe I should just do that. Yeah, I think I ended up doing a few things here, but what I'm going to do in Opsdroid's conf test, I'm going to define a new class. We'll call this mock API, something like that. And this will be, give it a docstring as well, a web server which can pretend to be an external API. I'm just going to do it like that now. Now I might want this in a different place, but let's just create an init as well. And this will set up a server. And then we also want something like start, which will start the server. These are not. I'm going to do this as docstring so that this is valid. Python start the server, and we want something like add root or like push response, something like that. So let's go. Let's say add response, or yeah, let's call it this for now. And this will take something like root, a method, return code, and a response. Something like that, or maybe this should be status code. And this will be like push a mocked response onto root. So kind of what I'm imagining here in this function is we would do something like, where's the method that we're kind of mocking out? Let's have a look at the actual connector, the GitHub connector. In connect, we make a call to GitHub API URL /user. And what I want to do is like push our own fake /user method onto our web server. So Opsdroid calls, the Opsdroid connector calls this URL and it gives whatever response we say we should do. So in our test, I'm going to get rid of all of these mocks. This is now going to be like failing, which is fine. We want to do something like set up our mock server, add /user root, and then run test. So let's try and do this very fast. We need to create an app. This code. So in here, let's do this, and we'll call this self.app. is that. I need to put in my imports as well. Can't type self.app import HTTP web. Okay, self.app equals a web application. I'm not going to add any rootlets. I'm going to move that down here actually. And then it was calling this function, this hello function. I think I actually want this to be something like maybe a lambda, because this returns this web response. Okay. We want to do something like add this root. We can do it with a method, right? But and then this, I'm going to make a lambda. That's going to just take request. And it's going to return web.response with response. I think that might need to be. Okay, so let's have a look at the web.response object. Web response. JSON response, that's what we probably want. Yeah, I think that's probably the kind of thing we want to do. This wants to be web.json response with that data object. It's going to be this response here. Does this take a status code as well? Yeah, status. This will be equal to 200 by default, and actually let's move that in order back here. We've got this response status equals. Let's just rename this status as well. Okay. When we add a response, we're gonna add this root, and this is just a get root at the moment. We can tidy this up in a minute, and it's just throwing a little handler in, which is just going to give me back this like canned output. I'm just going to do this for now. We can like clean this up much better later. But then I want this run app. Cool. Now I don't actually want, like in theory, I want this. That's web.run app. But I actually want this to be async. This is not sync. Not async. I guess it doesn't matter if this is async or not. We want the application to start on like a different port as well. Where's the application object? What I want next? Applications config, something like that. I want to set the port. Whole words. Let's have a look. I want to have a quick look at the Obstroid web class, because we do a bunch of this stuff in here. Yeah, so here we go. This is what we want. We have to create this like site object and things. We create our web application. We also create a runner and a site. I'm gonna do exactly the same thing in here. So we create that, get a runner, which is going to be self.app, and the site is just set to none. And then in start, we call runner setup, and then we set self.site equals TCP site that takes the runner. The host is going to be, for this, because it's a CI, it's just going to be localhost. And the port, let's set this to something like 80. Obstroid runs on 8080, so let's set this on 8089 just for fun. We're not going to do SSL. That's fine, so we don't want that. So we're now going to await this. So this is like the async way of starting the web server. We might want to implement the stop as well. Yeah, I'm literally just going to copy this over and have a stop method as well. Yeah, I think we do want to do that. And then, okay, so this is like a little shim. What I really want to do is I need to tweak this in a bit. Oh, this needs to be self, doesn't it? Self.app. And then this response, actually, I think I want to be like a path to a response. I'm going to change that, and I'm going to say response. Let's just Google quickly. Type Python JSON read from file on something that I can copy and paste very fast. Yeah, that'll do. So I'm going to say with open response path as JSON file response. I need to import JSON as well. Import JSON. Right, so with open response path as JSON file response equals JSON load the JSON file, and then we're going to reply with that. So we've got this mock API class. Now in my test GitHub connector, I'm just going to make a little fixture for this as well. So let's say pytest.fixture async def mock API. That's not going to take anything. But I want to say from obstroid.conf test import mock API. Mock API. And this will be this will return a mock API object because we might want to do some more customization here. I'm not quite sure what that is complaining about now. Whoa, is that so long? Not quite sure what's going on here. Anyway, I'm just gonna in test connect. I'm gonna take a mock API. We've got our mock API server. We're already passing that in, so that's fine. I'm going to add the /user root. So this will be mock API. What did I call it? Or add response. And then that takes the root, the method, the response, and the status. So the root is going to be /user. The method is going to be get, although it doesn't matter because we're only using a get anyway. The response path is going to be that file path to the. We have responses here. I don't know if I actually have a correct response here. Because I don't think that connect had one, did it? Let's just quickly head back to Obstroid. And come into here. Oh, I'm running out of time. I think I'm probably going to end up going over on this one. Bit of a shame, but let's quickly have a look. I want to try and do this nice and fast, but I want this to actually be useful. So let's spend a bit more time on it. Yeah, so this connect. No, not that. I want to test, which is actually up in tests. Next or Obstroid. No, connect to GitHub. That's why I'm looking for the wrong thing. There we go. Return value, login, Obstroid. That JSON we actually want to be in a file. Let's make a new file. We'll call this GitHub user.json and just put that in there as valid JSON. And then in our test, let's do with making this a bit simpler, but let's just come back up here and we're going to say response path equals os. Oh, yeah, we are importing os.path. So we're going to get the current folder and we're going to join responses, and then this will be GitHub user.json. We're going to read that in, and we'll just explicitly say the status will be 200. Right, so add this response in here. And then what we need to do is we need to start the web server, and then we need to call the code that will communicate with the web server. So the next things I want to do is I need to call this start. But what I need to do is I need to start the web server, and I also need to run my test code as like two separate operations. I'm just going to actually, just to make my life a little bit easier, up in the fixtures bit, I'm going to do def get response. I'm going to call this response. I'm just going to throw this code up here just to make this a bit neater because that's not very pleasant. So I'm just going to return that, and this will be response. Just cut that right. You know why it's not black formatting things? I don't know if I've got some like weird bit of code somewhere that's possibly a problem. Okay. Anyway, I'll find out what that is in a minute. Response path equals get response. That I can actually. I feel like that's a bit more pleasant, isn't it? This should probably actually be called get response path. That get response path. Okay, well that formatted that time, so I'm not quite sure what I did differently. Okay, so I've got this mock API. I'm adding this response. When the connector is going to call that, it's using this GitHub API URL here that it's taken from this global, which is fine. It makes sense. But I don't actually really want it doing that. I think I'm using this in a few places. Yeah, I'm using it there, and I'm defining it there. So what I want to do is I want to, in here, I want to say self.github API URL equals that. And then I want to use this in those places. And this is so that I can override it in my test. So I'm creating this connector, which by default is going to pick up the right URL. But in my test, when I construct my connector fixture, I want to say connector dot GitHub API URL is equal to, and I will actually, I want to take the mock, I'm going to move this up. Oh yeah. This mock API, I want to take in here as well. And I want to create, yeah, it's just, keeping it in a constant is like a nice place to have it, and it should probably actually be in the constants file, not in the GitHub connector file. But just actually doing an assignment in the init means you can override it later. I want a URL, or like a base URL here, right? So I'm going to change this GitHub API URL to this mock API base URL. Now in our conf test, I'm going to say self.host. Let's move these up here. Self.host equals that, and self.port equals that, and just use those. Self.host and self.port. And then I'm just going to add a property called, whatever I called it. What did I call it? Base URL. So let's add a property called base URL that just returns. So because this is offline testing, we're going to use HTTP. No, HTTP. Don't make curly brace there. Right, host and port with a colon in between. And I think I don't want a slash, so that'll be self.host. That'll be self.port. Okay, so we get this base URL. So in our test, when we create our connector, we're just literally going to say, use the base URL, use this web server that we're running ourselves now, which is fine. This means that in our test, I don't need to do anything else. When I call connect, this is going to hit the local server on /user with a get, and hopefully that's going to respond. So we need to run the server and we need to run the tests at the same time. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to say async def. So I'm inside my test, but I'm going to define another function. I'm just going to call it run, and I'm going to just indent that stuff. Okay, that is running that, and I'm actually also this isn't ideal, and I will probably fix this in a minute, but I'm going to await async.io.sleep, and let's just give it half a second. Because I want to call this run function and I want to call the server start function at the same time. I'm just going to give the server like half a second to come to life. I should probably actually do this differently, but for now let's just do that. And now what we can do is we can do async.io.gather calling run and calling. We need to await that. Mock API.start. Okay. Now the last thing here, which is not necessarily obvious, is we're calling async.io.gather, which if you give it two futures, it will run them both in parallel at the same time. It's like awaiting two functions at once. So we're not awaiting either of these. We're going to gather the futures that are coming out of that. So run will start, and we're going to work through this. We'll sleep, we'll connect, we'll do an assertion, we'll do another assertion, which I don't actually want that assertion anymore. I need to add another onto assert that we actually called it. And then start is also going to be run, and that was here, and we're just going to await this. What we actually need to do is we also need to stop. So in here, I'm going to then say await mock-api.stop. So when this function gets all the way through to the end, it's going to call stop, which should then cause this one to exit as well. So they should both exit out at the same time. I'm generally optimistic this might work. So let's have a look. Oh, that just passed. Lovely. Okay, that was slightly underwhelming because we just got like a little tick down the bottom. Let's just run it again here. Test connect. We're creating a server. We're going to connect to it. We're going to call that. Now, what I want to do is actually assert that we called it. So let's do that quickly as well. I'm going to add a new self dot. Let's just call this calls for now. It's not ideal. And let's make it a dictionary. I probably want to do something other than a lambda here because this is, yeah, let's actually add a thing. Let's say, just have a quick, I don't want the advanced bit. I just want server tutorial quick start with a simple web server. That is an async function, right? Let's say async def handler self response. No, request. And so instead of doing this in here, we're going to move that out. Let's return that and get rid of all of that lambda-ness. We're going to say self.handler. Oh, yeah, I need to think about that. Yeah, thanks for the thanks for the celebration. Let's have a look. So this response, yeah, I've not massively looked into those because I basically want to make the server. Maybe I should look into that before I go too much further down this route. I'm going to finish like how my brain's thinking, but I didn't realize that those classes existed. So I'll have a look at that in a minute. But let's just quickly think about this. So this response, I kind of want, I wanted to push this onto like a list, didn't I? So we're going to have self.responses, and that's going to be a dictionary as well. So let's say if root in self.responses, and then we'll say self.responses root dot push. Is it push to add to a list? Been writing other languages recently. Or is it append, add to list? Is append. What's push? JavaScript. I keep getting in a mess. Maybe it's Go. I want to append. I want to append this response. So let's. Yeah, I mean, I tend to write various languages all the time. I'm mostly in Python. I do a bit of JavaScript / TypeScript for front end things, and I also end up writing Go for more like back end and CI type stuff. I'm gonna append a tuple onto this list, which is gonna have the method, and the response. Yeah, I want to put that below this. No, not the method, the status. Okay. Then in the handler, I need to get that back out again. Basically, what I want this to be is a dictionary of all of the roots, and each value will be like a list of all of the different responses, so that it gives them in order. It will like pop off values as it goes through, so you can queue up a load of things. Like, the first time I call it, it gives this answer. The second time I call it, it gives this answer, and you can set up and stuff like this. And then calls, we want to like do the opposite, so we almost want to like pop the calls onto that stack backwards. So if root in that, else self.responses dot root equals a list with that tuple in. So that'll create it the first time if it doesn't exist. So then in here we want to do something similar, right? In here we'll say we need to define root somehow. We probably need to get that the request. If root in self.calls, do that, calls, append the request. I think I just want to append the request, right? Let's just work out how to do this. I'm just going to put a breakpoint in and debug the test. So we drop out here. There we are. Right, what does the request look like? It has path. The path that I want, I guess it is, isn't it? Request.path. Root equals request.path. Okay, let's stop that and run again. And then that response, you need to get the oldest item off a list. Python get first. Like pop first element from a list. Yeah, pop 0, right? We want to respond with self.responses root dot pop 0. No, actually, we want to assign that. So we want to say status and response equals that, and then respond with status and response. That makes more sense. Okay, we've got a little handler here, which is going to figure out the root. It's going to add the call to say we've called this root, and here's the request that we got. And then we're going to grab the status and response. We'll pop the first thing, the oldest thing off, and return them, and then that makes sense there as well. So that should work still. Okay, the test should just pass now. I haven't done anything more than just kind of break things out a bit here. Let's just make sure they pass. They do. That's good. So the last thing I want to do is I could add a helper in here, but I think like assert user in mock API dot calls, and let's also assert length mock API calls user is 1. Okay, and that passed as well. So I want to spend a bit of time neatening things up, but I think it would just be useful here to have this class, this mock API class, where in your tests you push responses on, say, you know, if I make a get to this, here's the response you should give back with this status, and then we can like assert things. So I should neaten these up a bit. So maybe there's some actual helpful functions. Yeah, maybe we have like assert mock API dot called and that or something. We could have called once and like following the mock API. We could have call count as well. Like there's a bunch of different things we could do to make the assertions a little neater. And the other thing I could do is try and deal with this a little bit. Yeah, I might. Yeah, I might try and wrap up some of that logic as well. So instead of having to define all of this, we probably still have to define a function, but maybe we can run it a bit better. But let's do that because that sounds useful. Let's in here. I'm going to wrap it up in this class. Let's have def run test. We'll just take self and the test function. This is coroutine, so let's call it that. Call it what it is. And this is an async function as well. And I'm just going to move some of this logic out of here. So I want gather that, and I want to gather a test coroutine. And no, actually, I probably want to async def like a little like underscore run or something, which is going to await that, the test, and then it will await self.stop. So we want to call run here and self.start. And I want to move that sleep as well. I should actually, I'm going to put that there. And I'm going to put a comment to just say to do replace with an actual check that the server is running. So we should add our own little route that we just like poll for and like you know and deal with any like exceptions that get raised when it's not there. So we like poll for it being up, and then we run our test coroutine, and then we stop. And so we can just pass in a single coroutine like that, which means we can get rid of this boilerplate from here. We don't need to do that. We don't need to stop it. We can just say await mock API dot run test. Not save this properly. Run test. Mock API dot run test. Run. I could even call this test. I feel like that actually makes more sense. We get our mock API. We add our data to it that we want to come back out. We run our code, and then we actually run it using the mock API little framework. Let's do that. Oh, that failed. What have I done wrong? What have I missed? Async IO is not defined. That makes more sense. I just haven't imported async IO in here. Import async IO. Again. Passed. Great. Okay, so this test is looking much neater than it was before, and it kind of makes more sense. Like we're adding the response on that we're expecting back. we do some testing. I want to clean up my assertions a little, those two, but then I can like run this test against the mock API. Things run in parallel. It's funny actually because we're running this function and we're then like starting an event loop. We're starting a web server, and then at the same time we're starting these tests. I think I just lost Bluetooth for a second. Then it seems to have come back. Yeah, okay, I think it's come back now. Right, I'll start again with that. So we call this function. This function. Where was I? Yeah, we call this function. The function comes through, gets to this point where we call connect. Calling connect makes an HTTP request to a web server, and then like we're awaiting this connect. So this will wait for that HTTP request. So it will hand control back to the loop. The loop will go around to the next thing to do, which is the web server side, and the web server will go, oh, I've received an HTTP request. I'll handle it and I'll pass it back. Now I will wait, and it will kind of hand back control. So the event loop is actually going around and talking to itself. Which I just find kind of neat. So I think that's a way that we can write reasonably like plain, simple tests. I might add a couple more little things to it, so we could have like a called. We could have like def called self root, and that would just be the bit from here. Let's just say it would just be that, but it would be that would be self, and that would be root return root in self.calls. So we could now say assert mock API called that. Right, so we can assert that that was called. We could even add like another one that's like call count or something. Call count, and that will be that same bit of code because these will be reusable. If this is a little pattern we're going to be doing quite often, that'll be that, and let's call this calls. So that will be the root equals calls. Oh no, actually I don't want to do that. I just want to return that. Yeah. Then we could say assert mock API call count of user equal to 1. Right, again, it's just to like neaten it up, make it look nice. We connect, we then assert that the connector's got the right name, we assert that that was called, we assert that the call count was 1. We could actually start inspecting because we could get the request back and make sure that, oh, the keys were handed or the request was made in a way that we were expecting or whatever. For now, I'm just going to run this. And that passed again. So I'm not quite at the point of making a pull request and I'm like way over time. So the idea of this video has kind of got a bit out of the window, but I think it's more important that we go through like how we're going to do things with this. Now, one other thing that we should probably think about at some point is making that call to GitHub may result in a call back to Opstroid, right? It won't necessarily respond. It may trigger some other event. If you made a call which restarted a GitHub action that was running, that GitHub action would run, and a few minutes later, the GitHub webhook would make a call back to Opstroid. And maybe we want to test that whole flow. Maybe we want to test if we hit this thing, then the call comes back, which means that where we're mocking out the Opstroid web server up here in the connector, we probably don't want to do that. We probably actually want this web server running as well as part of this, maybe even as part of this fixture. So we should probably think about that at some point. And we might want to have a test where we're kind of testing the incoming webhooks. So we have like a similar API where we say, here's an event from GitHub, and just fire it at the webhook endpoint, and then do a whole bunch of stuff to assert that the OpsDroid web server handled things as we'd expect. It's almost like the inverse of testing this, which we'd need to do for like webhook-based skills. I think we are doing that kind of thing for the Facebook one. We're doing all these mocking, right? That's fine. So we need to come back and do that. And what I do need to do now is I need to sit and go through all these other tests, and basically just say, well, when we do this thing, oh yeah, okay. So this one is giving a 401 with bad credentials. So we would do exactly the same test again, but instead of adding this JSON with a status of 200, we would add a different one with a status of 401. Is this bit of text here, and then the code would be the same. We basically want to assert that we got an error and that things kind of finish. But we would like replace this with something similar, and it means it's actually going to make that call. We're not mocking out HTTP. It's actually going to hit a dummy API. And it, as we kind of keep going through these tests, it should make them kind of simpler and simpler to implement. But I'm not going to do that on stream. You say I had luck with the make moke request to call the webhook get handler. Just get a problem with the post because I'm awaiting JSON and it's not happy. Okay, using a mock coroutine. Yeah, is that in terms of like make mock request? Is that you are making a request to your connector, pretending to be the webhook? Is that right? Or is this part of the built-in like testing stuff? Because there is a testing section of the docs which I just haven't read. And maybe this is like a better implementation, but I feel like this is like a different topic for me to look through. But yeah, I'm not going to make a pull request now. I'm going to keep playing with this another time. Okay, fine. Yeah, that makes sense. I should have a look through this because it looks like a lot of this stuff is similar to what I've just built. But I think that's kind of useful. If it is similar and I can just switch on to using this, that's even better. I means adapt to worry about setting these things up myself. It does say this module is a provisional, so maybe things are going to change in here. But I'm going to call it a day there. I'm going to keep playing around with things. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I'm going to keep playing around with things. I might end up, I'll probably make a pull request with at least just rewriting these tests in a different way into OpsDroid at some point. I guess that counts as making a pull request from this stream. For those that aren't Fabio that are watching this, the point of the stream is basically just for me to talk to Fabio about how to do this. But I'm hoping recording this should provide some value to others as well. But yes, please steal this, use it in other connectors and other places and other projects and everything. So thanks for watching. I will see you